Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So this time we are coming back and taking a look at a deck that I haven't covered in quite some time and that a lot of you probably haven't seen in quite some time. In fact, I think it's been long enough since this deck has been meta relevant that there's probably a decent amount of people watching this video that have never even really heard of this deck. This is Adventure Phantom Knight. So about a year ago, maybe even a little bit sooner than that, Adventure Phantom Knight was one of, if not the best deck around. Well, probably around that time it was actually Adventure Prank Kids, but Adventure Phantom Knight was a very close second. This was arguably the better deck. At the time that was a bit of a debate, but you know, then Water Enchantress went to 1, and Fusion Destiny also went to 1, and after that people kind of started getting off of these adventure decks that use, well, of course, the Adventure Engine with the Water Enchantress, the Gryphon Rider, the Rite of Aramesir, the Fateful Adventure, and the Dracoback, as well as, of course, the DPE engine, DPE standing for Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, as well as the main decked Malicious, where is it? Denier, the Fusion Destinies, which are right here, and of course everyone's favorite Vert Anaconda. The thing about the Adventure Phantom Knight deck, however, is this deck was much less impacted by those limits. It's something that I talked about a lot at the time, and I've also talked about recently as this deck actually did get top 100 duel scope, which was a lot of the inspiration for me to revisit the list to make this deck profile. In fact, I think the main and extra deck are like only a couple of cards off of that top 100 list. They might even be card for card the same, although I think they were on 41 cards and played 3 Droll. That might actually even be the only difference, but the extra deck does have a couple of differences that I'll talk about in a moment here. But as I was saying, Adventure Phantom Knight, unlike Adventure Prank Kids, will actually send the Water Enchantress and Fusion Destiny from the deck to the graveyard as part of its main inherent combo line. So at the time when a lot of people said, oh, adventure decks aren't good anymore, I was kind of trying to make the case that, well, Adventure Phantom Knight is probably still fine because of the combo line, and sure enough, I used it for a little bit afterward, and it felt like a completely fine, you know, maybe not tier 1 like it was before, but tier 2 deck at the very least at the time. But again, you know, it just wasn't that widely explored. There is this phenomenon in not just Yu-Gi-Oh! But any TCG where a deck can actually be simply underrepresented, where it's actually fine, even good in any given meta. It's just the fact that nobody's playing it. And this deck making it to the top 100 of the Duelist Cup actually kind of made me think it might still be the case for it. And now that I have gotten to play this deck quite a bit, then yeah, I can agree. This deck is actually still fine, and if I had to put a power level to it, it honestly feels like it's mid, maybe even upper rogue power level. That's just my feeling that I get as I've been playing a few games with it here and there. Now, of course, I haven't done extensive testing. I've probably only played about a dozen or so games with this list, but it feels very good. It feels very good to play. And the funny thing is, it's not even really doing anything different than it was before. Literally, the only new cards that have been introduced to the game that we've added to the deck since about a year ago, even longer when this deck was relevant, are the 2 Kashtira Fenrir, which of course we're just going to play these because they're great cards and we have the room for them in this deck. But everything in both the main and the extra has just been out this entire time. This list, again, Fenrir's aside, but also, again, you can sub them for, like, you know, any other kind of disruption card. This has been available the entire time, and I think that if you were to take this list, or even this list of mine as Fenrir's, to ranked ladder, and you learned the deck, and you were dedicated, and you played enough games, I think you could pretty easily reach master rank with this deck. Yeah, it's pretty good. I had a lot of fun playing with it, like I said. I was a little bit rusty, so I think I still did the combo lines fairly optimally, but of course, if I didn't, feel free to let me in the comments. I would love to know to improve this deck once again. So, we'll go over kind of it's funny, I might have to link one of my old combo guides from way back in the day playing this deck, because a lot of you probably might not be too familiar with how the list plays out. But basically the idea is that if you open like a couple of level 3 monsters like the Phantom Knights, like if you open pretty much any of Phantom Knights plus a Silo Boots, which is your extender that can summon itself, then you can go into the Cherubini. Cherubini can send the Water Enchantress from the deck to the graveyard, and then from there, of course, you can do the Rite of Aramesir, and you can set all of that stuff up. Now, if you set up the Silent Boots in the graveyard, which again you would have to in this case because you use it as your extender. You can banish it to add, set, and then immediately activate Shade Brigandine. This summons itself as a dark monster and can actually be activated the turn that it's set if you have no trap cards in your graveyard, which you won't at this point in the combo. So from there, you can link off your Shade Brigandine and your Cherubini for the Rusty Bardish. Rusty Bardish can send whichever Phantom Knight monster is most relevant in your graveyard from the deck to the graveyard, and then also set a Fog Blade directly onto the field. So that's a monster negate. Of course, this combo line, as I mentioned, already put up the, that's not DPE, DPE is over here. Or not DPE, I mean, it's the Wandering Gryphon Rider, good lord. You can also then set up the DPE using whatever you milled off the Rusty Bardish, you know, something you could potentially add off the Ancient Cloak. Of course, I haven't talked about Torn Scale. Torn Scale is actually the main combo piece here. Ideally, you would open Torn Scale plus Silent Boots, because Torn Scale can not only summon itself back to the field from the graveyard once the Silent Boots is banished, but also you can then discard a card to set up another Phantom Knights card in the graveyard, like, for example, the Fog Blade. Fog Blade has the ability to banish itself from the graveyard to bring back one of your Phantom Knight monsters, acting as another extender. Of course, also acting as a monster effect negate on the field, as we touched upon earlier. Also, we are playing a single copy of Ragged Gloves. If, for example, you need to activate Shade Brigandine still, but you want to set up a Fog Blade, you can send Ragged Gloves instead, because Ragged Gloves can send any Phantom Knights card from the deck to the graveyard, like the Fog Blade here. So that's kind of how I use Ragged Gloves, right? If I want Fog Blade set up, but I still need to use Brigandine, you can just send the gloves here. Gloves also not bad to open either. And it might not seem like much, right? You might be thinking, oh, well, sure, okay, you set up the DPE plus, you know, the Gryphon Rider, plus, like, the monster negate. Is that really that much? I mean, that is 3 interaction points right there. It's a monster negate, it's an omni negate, and it's also an on-field destruction, which I've always been of the mindset that if you're going to be ending on multiple disruptions, ideally, you want to end on, like, varied disruptions so that you can respond to various situations in different ways. So, yeah, I mean, 3 disruption points that's usually about what it takes to break somebody's turn 2 combo if you go off uninterrupted on turn 1 for most decks, I find. So again, that's assuming you just open like something, for example, like Torn Scales and Silent Boots. Of course, if you open other Disruption, you have that at your arsenal, and if you open Fenrir, you have the ability to use that, so on and so forth. Speaking of Disruption, for our Disruption, I chose to play Droll and Troll Tactics Talents because, well, that's what the Duel Scup Top 100 list played, but it makes sense, right? Droll and Lockbird is just very good in general in this format, very good against a lot of decks in the meta right now. And I actually really like the 3 Triple Tactics talent. It might seem a bit odd at first glance to not play something like Crossout or even Thrust, like 2 copies of Thrust in 1 talent, but the thing about Adventure Phantom Knight is you can't play Imperms, right? Because we need to have no trap cards in our graveyard for Shade Brigandine. So in that regard, I actually do like playing the triple tax instead. It's weird because it's kind of hard. You might not see the comparison of talents to Imperm, but the way I see it is it's a versatile type of, not really disruption, although it can also be disruption, tool. Actually, I think it is more often disruption, either taking an opponent's monster or looking at their hand. I almost never do the draw to, so yeah, it's kind of a disruption tool that's not a trap card, but it's still usable on both turn 1, or I guess going first or second, much like Imperm is. So alright, let's go ahead and break this list down card by card, because I've actually been talking about this deck for quite a while. I really, really like this deck. I'm actually very passionate about Phantom Knights. I just have a lot of fun whenever I play this deck, so I really wanted to talk about it in detail because I do feel like this deck is pretty criminally underrated, which I was also saying more than a year ago. But anyway, let's break the list down card by card and look at these games here. So we're on 2 Droll and Lockbird, 3 Maxx, 2 the Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloak, 3 the Phantom Knights of Silent Boot, 1 the Phantom Knights of Ragged Glove, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 the Phantom Knights of Torn Scales, 1 Destiny Hero Denier, 1 Water Enchantress of the Temple, 2 Destiny Hero Malicious, 1 Wandering Gryphon Rider, 2 Kashtira Fenrir, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, 2 Fusion Destiny, 3 Triple Tactics Talent, 2 Rite of Aramesir, 1 Dracoback the Rideable Dragon, 1 Fateful Adventure, 2 Call by the Grave, 1 the Phantom Knights of Shade Brigandine, and then 3 Phantom Knights Fog Blades. It's going to do it for our main deck. For the extra deck, We are on 1 Destiny Hero, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, 1 Leviair the Sea Dragon, 1 the Phantom Knights of Breaksword, 1 Downerd Magician, 1 Raiders Knight, 1 Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon, 1 Divine Arsenal AA-ZEUS Sky Thunder, 1 Lake Spider, 1 Salamangreat Almiraj, 1 Cherumni Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss, 1 Predaplant Vert Anaconda, 1 Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 the Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardish, and then finally 1 Access Code Talker. So that'll do it for our list. Let's go ahead and see some games here. Alright, so our first game for this video is going to be against Adventure Scareclaw, which is a deck I actually did try, I attempted to start building recently. I got a couple of 10 packs and they were pretty abysmal pulls, let me just tell you, but we're going to be taking the first turn, and this is a phenomenal opening hand. I'm going to start with Reinforcement of the Army to add the Torn Scales. Like I said, Torn Scales plus Silent Boots is going to be our main combo line here. So, going to normal summon the Scales, special the Boots. One thing I do want to note for this combo line is that when you normal summon Torn Scales, do not, I repeat, do not activate its effect right away. We will be using Torn Scales effect later in the combo line, but in order to activate Rite of Aramesir, we can't have activated the effects of a monster that was normal summoned in the same turn. So if we activate Torn Scales effect, we cannot do an adventure line at all. But again, we will be able to do it later after we've special summoned it. But just remember, if you normal summon Torn Scales and then activate the effect, no adventure stuff. So Cherumni will send the Water Enchantress. Water Enchantress will then get to banish herself to add the Rite of Aramesir. Rite of Aramesir is going to activate summoning the Adventure token, also setting up the Fateful Adventure. Then I'm going to use Torn Scales effect to actually get the Shade Brigandine here. Basically what I'm doing is I'm summoning my Torn Scales, so that way I can proc the Fateful Adventure and discard that, or the Dracoback rather, that I searched for the Gryphon Rider. I could have just discarded Ancient Cloak. I didn't have to do it this way, but I figured I could show it this way. That way, if you had a hand where you didn't want to discard anything at all, you could still, you know, set up your Gryphon Rider without losing any of those cards there. So I'll use Torn Scale to pitch that Ancient Cloak and set up the Fog Blade before flipping up the Shade of Brigandine and then linking it off with the Cherumni for the Rusty Bardish here. Bardish effect will send the Ragged Gloves, because I don't really have much else to send at this point. Setting the Fog Blade. Fog Blade F brings back the Ancient Cloak. Ancient Cloak effect will turn itself to defense mode, giving my Rusty Bardish an 800-point attack boost. Not needed, but it's definitely helpful. I'm then going to overlay for Leviair, and the reason I'm doing this is to get my Silent Boots back into the graveyard. You don't necessarily have to do this. Like, I could have just linked off for the Vert Anaconda with those two and not use Leviair, but I like having as many Phantom Knight names in the graveyard as possible for the follow-up turn. That's actually one of the strengths of Phantom Knight, is that if you go first, you set up a pretty good board, and even if your opponent fully breaks it, you have a graveyard full of effects waiting to activate. So, yeah, and then of course we set up the DPE, and then pass over to our opponent. Fenrir is going to activate. Here, I'm going to go ahead and use the Phantom Knight's Fog Blade on the Fenrir here. I thought it was pretty reasonably likely that my opponent was not going to be on Kashtira, but the reason I decided to use Fog Blade here was to not necessarily even stop the search, but more to stop the banishing effect from coming up later, because of course I am going to want to use the monster effects later in the turn. This will also stop the Fenrir from being able to attack, which is also pretty helpful. So we'll go ahead and use the Fog. I would prefer not to use the Fog Blade here, but I just really thought the Fenrir banish was going to be too much of a problem later if I didn't do it now. So here I'll wait for the Fateful Adventure to activate before popping it with the DPE. I just don't want my opponent to set up a Omni Negate. Here I wondered if my opponent was actually like going to be on a like Adventure Kashtira build where they're on like maybe an Auroradon package or something. I've actually played a deck like that before, but the Dracoback, which was unfortunately in their hand, which is not good luck for me at all, is going to force my Wandering Gryphon Rider by threatening to bounce it. And then, yeah, they're going to normal summon the Scareclaw below, which will, of course, reveal that they are on Scare Adventure Cash. Which, again, seems like a very cool deck. I want to get into it. If I can pull the cards. But okay, Field Spell is getting the right card. Right card's going to special itself, adding the Straddle here. And they get to draw a card because of the multitude of defense position monsters. I'm going to Called By here because they are forcing my hand with the Field Spell pop. However, this Called By is not necessarily wasted, because that was the only level 3 Scareclaw monster in my opponent's graveyard. They're actually not going to be able to use Tryhard's effect to, well, bring back a level 3 and then search a Scareclaw monster, which is nice. It means it's going to be a lot harder for them to be able to, like, do damage or make any sort of, like, offensive advancing plays. But it's looking like they are going to climb into something here using Link Spider and Reinhardt. And I haven't seen this package before, but they're actually using Codebreaker Virus Swordsman, and they are actually using Codebreaker Zero Day as well. It's funny because I've looked at these cards before, thinking like, surely they do something, right? Like, this package seems cute. Like, it seems like it could do something, and it's cool to see my opponent actually experiment with it here. As you can see, it's allowed them to extend quite a bit, and even pop my macros in the process. Yeah, now they're going for Isold. Looks like we're using Isold's effect to add another Scareclaw Reinhardt here. And now we're linking that off with the Code Virus Berserker in order to summon the Access Code Talker. So, at 5,300 as well, that's a very, very good move on my opponent's part here. Alright, so Access Code is just doing, you know, Access Code things, popping my board. Scareclaw Straddle is going to make this Tryhard huge. Access Code will continue to pop my stuff. Opponent's moving to battle. Battling over the Anaconda, but as I go for lethal, I still have the Fog Blade effect. I'm trying to bring back the Ragged Gloves, however, Call By is going to end up banishing the Ragged Gloves, which might seem like it's the end of my comeback here, and then I'm going to lose the duel. However, Torn Scale's effect will activate no matter how a Phantomite monster is banished, which means I can bring it back, try her battles into it, and I live through this turn. Now, I only have a triple attack here, so it seems. However, well, we do top the Torn Scales, but even that aside, as I mentioned earlier, one of the strengths of Phantom Knight is that your graveyard is going to be loaded with comeback effects here. So here during the standby phase, I'm going to get to bring back DPE, and I already have Mally and Denier. Denier will set up another Mally summon. I also have a Silent Boots, an Ancient Cloak here. I have a lot of options in my graveyard alone for advancing my board state, so... yes, the Torn Scales top deck was very good, but I didn't even necessarily need it specifically in order to continue my plays here. I will use DPE to pop the Face Down card just to get it off the field. Glad I did, as Book of Moon would have definitely messed me up. As I said, I'm going to summon Mally and Denier. Denier putting back the Mally for another summon. I'm going to use Ancient Cloak to add the Silent Boots. It's going to be another extender for me there. Denier and Mally, I'm going to go ahead and link off for Dark the Dark Charmer Gloomy. Glooey's effect will allow me to bring back the Codebreaker Virus Swordsman. And remember, Tryhard can only turn monsters to defense mode. And Link monsters, well, can't get turned to defense mode, so... we can definitely use those to our advantage here. Now I'm going to go for the Nightmare Unicorn to start getting rid of my opponent's board. I have a lot of, extension in hand. As you can see, I didn't even have to use the Torn Scales or Silent Boots up to that point. Granted, I probably would have had to pretty shortly afterward, but we had a pretty straight shot to victory there. And I really wanted to highlight that game in particular because, one, my opponent did a really cool little extension combo there with the Codebreaker stuff. Thought it was very neat. But also, it showed off the full turn 1 combo line, and also how we then come back on turn 3. So, like, the turn 1 line might not look like a lot, and then you might think, oh, it doesn't set up that much disruption, but even if your opponent manages to push all the way through it, like I said, we still were able to fully come back and win. So let's go and see some more duels here. Alright, so this game that we're going to see next is up against Labyrinth. It's actually been a minute since I've played against Lab. Like, I don't see it on ladder at all anymore, but this will be another going first game, but don't worry, the other 2 games, I think they're both going second games. I know the next one is, and you're going to want to see the next one for sure. It's a great going second game, but... for this one, we actually started off with both the Rite of Aramesir and Fusion Destiny, which of course definitely makes things a lot less complicated. I also love having the triple tacks in these hands, right? Like, I know last game we didn't use the triple tack, but I still just like having the security of it with my turn 1 plays, right? Because then I know even if I get stopped, due to my opponent having some sort of monster effect from hand, I can look at their hand to put something back, potentially cut them off from their plays altogether, but even if not that, I at least have some kind of an idea of what I'm up against, which will be hugely beneficial to, well, you know, winning the duel. But as you can see, we are doing a lot of the same stuff, and I'm even actually still going to summon Vert Anaconda, even though I have the Fusion Destiny in hand. The reason I'm doing that is because I don't really have that much else to do with the bodies here that I'm going to be summoning. And I don't want to draw the Fusion Destiny later, just a random one that's in the deck. So, you know, I'll just send it now. It's fine. It's like the only other Link 2 we even have to summon is like Dark the Dark Charmer, which obviously doesn't do anything on turn 1. So I'm like, yeah, I'll just make the Vert Anaconda anyway. Besides, if I activate Fusion Destiny from hand now, well, I'm going to make the Leviair first, of course, and then bring back my Banished Phantom Knight monster, the Ancient Cloak, and boost my Bardish. But yeah, like, you know, the other thing too is that if I use my Fusion Destiny from hand, then it's not like I'm going to use Vert Anaconda for the rest of the duel, so might as well utilize the Vert Anaconda and Fusion Destiny in deck. That's how I see it. Oh, and also, obviously, you can't lead with Fusion Destiny, because if you do, then you can't special summon anything besides Dark Warriors for the rest of the turn. So this was actually an interesting play for my opponent here. During my end phase, the Emperor of the Wandering Gryphon Rider, right? And then following that, they're actually going to utilize the Chandragolier in order to set up the Welcome Lab. When I saw the end phase Imperm, I was very confused at first. I was like, oh, do they not know? Like, that's not going to go, like, then the gate will go away at the end of the turn. But here things make a little more sense, but at the same time, I don't know, maybe my opponent just didn't have that much else going on with their hand. I guess to be fair, maybe it doesn't kind of look like they did. I mean, Big Welcome Lab is of course a great card, but, you know, setting it on turn 2 I think is a little bit too slow in a situation like this. But the thing is, even if they set Welcome Lab, I can just use the DPE to pop it. So maybe they forgot about that or didn't realize it, or maybe that was just the right play anyway. But they're going to summon the Ariana here. I'm going to have the Fog Blade for it. Interestingly enough, the Big Welcome does actually threaten to bounce it, but the Gryphon Rider here is just going to negate that. And then at this point they concede, which makes sense because now they only have 2 cards left in hand. They've already used their normal summon, and it's really hard for Lab to only have 2 cards left in that situation that are actually going to be impactful. And also I still haven't used DPE yet, so if they try to set cards to use on my turn, I can just pop them during the end phase before my opponent has a chance to activate them and, well, neutralize them that way. So there is that other going first game. Now, like I said, these other games are going to be going second. So let's see the next duel here. All right, this next game is against Kashtira P.U.N.K. And if you're kind of thinking to yourself so far, okay, well, you know, this deck obviously has a good turn 1 setup, but can it actually do anything if it goes second? And our opponent has a board we have to play through. The answer is actually very much yes, and this game will be a perfect demonstration of that. So, as you can see, we are going second and don't have any disruption in our hand. Opponent's going to start with the Unicorn, adding the Birth. Foxy Tune will reveal that they are, in fact, on a P.U.N.K deck. So, the Xayamine will add the Sharkusai. Sharkusai is going to normal summon and then fuse with the Xayamine in order to summon the Rising card. Rising card will, of course, activate to banish here. And then pull out the Durno and Wagon. Wagon will be paying 600 to add the field spell. This is all pretty typical P.U.N.K stuff that they're doing here. But they're actually going to veer a little bit off course for most cash P.U.N.K decks as far as what they do. Because our opponent is actually going to be on Chaos Ruler as well as Bestial monsters. I've thought about trying to do this myself, playing both Kashtira and Chaos Ruler / Bestials in the P.U.N.K deck. But I don't know, I feel like doing both at the same time is a bit much. And as you can see by the fact they're bringing back Foxy Tune, they are actually going to be going for a zombie vamp here. But the thing is, like, I don't know, you don't really want to mill Kashtira monsters that badly. I guess a milled Fenrir with the Birth would actually not be bad at all here, to be fair. But oh, they get to summon the Rebellion here and set up the Branded Regained. Oh, and now they're gonna overlay the Foxy Tune and Rebellion, looks like, for the zombie vampire. Which, again, I don't know, their list, it just doesn't really seem like they have a whole lot to benefit from Zombie. Like, Chaos Ruler is a little bit more understandable, but Zombie Vamp I feel like is a bit much, honestly. Chaos Ruler is activating here. They have to banish a Magnum Hut from hand, which is actually very, very good for us. I was initially very worried about that Magnum Hut, but yeah, now it's gone. We don't have to worry about it anymore, so that's good. Ogre Dance will discard to add a Madam Spider. Field spell, yes, I believe is going to activate here, banishing the Deer Nut, especially in the Spider, which will allow them to add the Nashiwari Surprise, and even get an extra draw off the field spell as well. Setting 2, activating the Birth in order to bring back the Unicorn, before passing it back to me. So as you can see, we got a decent chunk of stuff to play through, but if you actually get the board, it's not that bad, honestly. We have to play through an Omni Negate, that's going to be one of the more difficult things. The extra deck rip might hurt, but I don't know. There's not really any one thing that's going to cut me off from, like, all of my plays altogether. So I think the extra deck rip is fine. We know with the Nashiwari Surprise, we have to play through a pop, and their opponent's going to have a face-down card and 2 cards in hand to be concerned about as well. Going to start with Fenrir. Opponent's going to immediately use the Surprise and also fire off a Maxx, so that's obviously not that great, but, you know, we're going to have to deal with it. This did at least make my triple attack live, to be fair. Anyway, I'll use the Silent Boots to add the, what is it called? The Shade Brigandine. This will proc the Kashtira Unicorn, which I did want this to happen sooner rather than later just to see what they'd take. They end up taking Zeus, which I wondered if they would. Zeus, to be fair, was one of my first thoughts as far as how to break this board. But then I was thinking about it some more, and I was like, you know, we are running the Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon. This does kind of seem like the perfect setup to actually OTK with it, so we can actually just go for that. And of course, that's actually very simple to OTK with. All you need are 2 level 3s to go into Breaksword. Breaksword pop itself in an opponent's card, bring them back as level 4s, go into Raider's Knight. Raider's Knight ranks up to Arc Rebellion, and there you have it. So yeah, I'm just going to use triple attack to force the Baron here. And at this point, I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. If my opponent has something face down, they have it, you know. But I will set up Fogblade in the graveyard real quick just to maybe have another extender. But so I'm going for the Breaksword, playing on popping the back row. And here, this I actually don't know if this was a concede or a genuine connection fail, because my opponent was still getting priority passed to them, so I think they might have still had something. If my opponent's face down card was Imperm, they could definitely chain that, and that would mess me up pretty badly. I do have the Breaksword in the yard, as well as the Shade Brigandine. Not Shade Brigandine. What's that trap card called? Is it Shade Brigandine? Not Fogblade, the other trap card. The one I added with Boots. Yeah, Shade Brigandine. I always mix that up with Rusty Bardish, but I did have a couple of extenders left, so I didn't have, like, I wouldn't have had no options, but I would have had to have thought about it a lot harder. But in any case, we do have one more game to check out, another going second duel, so let's go straight into it. And our final opponent is going to be on Pure Thunder Dragons. Like I said, this will be another going second game here. Although this time we're going to have a certain Earth Insect to help us out. Yeah, we did open Maxx here, but, you know, it's part of the game, so I don't feel the replay is necessarily any less valid for showing it. Plus, to be fair, Thunder Dragons do have the option to set up a pretty powerful Disrupt in a very minimal amount of special summons. That, of course, being the Thunder Dragon Colossus, which for this deck does threaten to stop quite a few plays, especially with a hand like this. I mean, hand obviously is not looking the best, although that Silent Boots is a pretty good draw. So here I'm going to actually rip the best card I could have gotten here is Fenrir. It's funny, I was actually just thinking, even right before I drew it, like, oh, I hope I really draw Fenrir. I really hope I draw Fenrir, rather. It'd be very, very good. To be fair, we could have also top-decked pretty much any Phantom Knights monster and made a rank 3. And while, of course, Breaksword wouldn't have been able to destroy the Colossus because of Colossus' effects, we could have still gone to a Zeus. Like, we had top decks, you know? And even if we hadn't top decked anything super relevant, we still had options with the Fogblade. We could have, like, negated the Colossus to stop ourselves from dying and then maybe come back with a follow-up turn, but it also definitely helps when you just top deck the literal perfect out in the form of Fenrir. So I'm going to special summon the Fenrir, and my opponent activates Maxx, which I don't think they initially realized when they activated this, but that actually is a huge benefit to me because it means I'm able to activate the Fenrir's effect and then banish the Thunder Dragon Colossus, which was the only thing really stopping me from, well, I don't know if it's the only thing stopping me from making plays, but also with the fact that I have triple attack in hand, this will greatly open up what I'm able to do. Now, you might wonder why I'm speaking hypothetically and not just showing you the rest of the duel. Well, this is going to be a very brief one, because as soon as they activate the sea, my opponent concedes. I didn't even get a chance to activate Fenrir. I think they did just realize, like, what they had done, and as a result, like I said, just conceded. So, that last duel was a bit of a quick one, but still thought it was kind of entertaining, and wanted to show that they were going second game, so thought I'd sneak that in. But, yeah, that'll go ahead and do it for this video. Thanks, everybody, for watching these games, and now let us move to our outro. Alright everybody, that's going to do it for this video. Thank you for watching it all the way to the very end. That means a whole lot to me, and it's also a fantastic way to support the channel. And if you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways besides YouTube, there are plenty of ways to do that. If you check out the description below, you'll find a bunch of links down there. One of them goes to my Patreon. You're actually seeing the names of everyone subscribed to the Patreon on the screen right now. So if you're interested in getting your name in the credits here at the end, if you want to see more daily Master Duel content, or if you're interested in one-on-one private coaching sessions, I offer all of that on Patreon. I also stream live on Twitch. Feel free to go ahead and click that link and follow and or subscribe there. I also have the Discord community, if you want to follow that link, where hundreds of duelists have already signed up. Free to join, and you can just come hang out, talk about the game, and chill in general. Final link that's going to be in the description is my Twitter. You can follow that if you want some more notifications of what's happening with the channel. So, all in all, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day.